and flow is so rich. The quiet leaders that we speak to do three things. They examine what they need to do, they experiment with new ideas and skills, and they explain with a clarity of thinking and communication. And that helps behavior change. When you have behavior change, you grow either in a personal level, as a leader, or as a business. My name is Shamini Sudan. Please join us for Leadership in Flow every Thursday at 6 p.m. Malaysia, Singapore time.
You're muted.
Good evening, Singapore.
Oh, what's a husky voice for that?
No, because I forgot to get you, back on into that space, and then I'm a bit distracted because I can see my umbrella, which I didn't put away. So, good evening, Ashok. How are you?
Yes, Mother, you're back. I am well, thank you very much. It's been some time since I've seen you.
And it's been a while since we hosted together. You've been happily hosting with Shamini. So I'm glad to be back. I don't quite care what you think. Lovely to be here. And, of course, you're going to... Why are you laughing?
No, go ahead. Yes.
Yeah. And, today I think I love... most topics I love, but today's one is interesting because we are going to talk about leaders of change, right? And we want to really look at how leaders cope. And today's topic is, for me, very exciting because we're talking about people-powered succession. And why is that important? Because, I happen to know Melanie. For some reason, I've been calling her Melissa, right? So Melanie, Melanie. And I think her journey has been, for me, a very inspiring one, in the way she has really got, into this shoe of leadership very quickly as the CEO of People Potential. But more importantly, I think this month is the month of International Women's Day. And Melanie is, I think, the right person to start the month of March to tell all women out there, you know what? We haven't. We just have to, show it and rock it. So with that, Ashok, I'm going to allow you to be very, very nice and introduce Melanie to us.
You've already introduced her.
You're not going to say more nicer things to her, is it?
I can't wait for her to come through, to ask her all the questions.
She's here. So Mel, I told you, right? Ashok is not as good as we said he is. So now I'm your friend. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, Mala. Ashok.
Yes. Hi, Mel. So yeah, this is what exactly Mala does. She throws all the spanas at us, and I'm like, okay, what do I do now? But yes, having met you on last week, it was very nice to hear your journey as a leader. What really got me interested, because for this month we are talking about leaders of change, and more often not, when we talk about change, we're talking about how the leader shows up, the leader's roles, what they do to support a change initiative, so on and so forth, right? But here what we have is the change is the leader. You are the change in that sense, in many ways, and I'm sure that our listeners are like very curious to understand what we're talking about. So perhaps, Mala, we will roll off with the first question to understand what do we mean by she is the leader of change.
Yeah. Okay. You can see the Mel is like, okay, what am I going to talk about? a little bit of a background, right? Because I think whenever we, when we do leadership development program and when we work with leaders, I think one of the challenges often, are we ready, right? And I think as leaders, I'm not too sure whether there's a space for us to ever say we are ready, right? And your story is a very interesting story in the way the organization is, in the way the culture is, right? So, tell us a little bit about your background, how you became the CEO, right, of People Potential without what we call a succession planning. So, you were just in the organization, you had just joined the organization, right, as the head of sales, and then you got to become the CEO. Now I think from the outside the story is like, whoa, that's so cool, because it's a position to die for. But really we want to focus on a lot of people, especially women, who tend to doubt themselves and say, I'm not too sure whether I am ready. So tell us first, maybe for the audience who are listening in, tell us your story of how you became the CEO, and then we'll take it from there. To you, Mel, before I talk more. Yes, tell us your story.
Okay, I thought you were going to tell the story. I was quite happy to listen. All right, so I joined People Potential as the head of sales, and prior to that, I had other roles, right? Some of them in leadership roles as well, in different capacities, right? And so when I joined People Potential as the head of sales, it was in January 2021, early 2021. And then the opportunity for the CEOship came up in June or July, right? It presented itself. And it was actually due to the current CEOs, I mean, not current, not me, but at that time CEOs, he had health scare, right? So we had to kind of like ramp up this succession planning. I'm not going to talk about the succession planning. It was powered by the people, right? But in terms of my thought process at that time, right? So I have been in leadership roles, and most of them, my entire career spanning 16 years, was in sales, right? So I know sales very well. And I took up leadership roles in sales and did well. I would think so, right? Unless somebody comes here and says otherwise, right? When that opportunity presented itself, I was thinking, there were so many times as the head of sales, you think that, oh, if I was in finance, I would do this, and if I was in operations, I would have done this differently, or maybe, it could have been done better. And this was the opportunity to try those ideas out, or venture into it, right? So at that point, your mind is thinking, look, you're given this opportunity, take it, because this is where you are going to experiment those thoughts, right? There is no literature in what are these new things that you want to try, because it's real. It's in an organization. What they're facing is real, right? And you know that you can make that difference. Otherwise, you will not step up, So I saw it as an opportunity, and I took it, right? Of course, it was not one-sided. It was voted in by the people, so that worked in my favor. And then I became the acting CEO in August of 2021.
Well, that was pretty fast, isn't it? I mean, because based on your timeline that you're sharing, it's definitely the COVID period. So I can imagine the kind of turmoil the business world has been in the economy and all of that. So you came in January, and within like 6-7 months, you were chosen as a leader, right?
Yes.
So we are going to be talking about what's the reason you got chosen, but what's your level of motivation? What was in it for you to say, you know what? Yes, I know you heard saying that you can make some changes in the whole operations, but what was driving you from within?
I want to make those changes. It's very simple, right? See, salespeople are very simple people, huh? Very
Simple.
black and white. See opportunity, we take opportunity, right? There's no additional thinking that's going behind.
Okay.
Right? You see it, you take it, right? So, like what I said, it was the ability to You see opportunity, you take it, right? And you know you can affect change. You know you can take it to the next level, right? Now, organizations, in that 6 months I was there, I understood a little bit more about the learning and development space, right? And the cycles the organization has gone through, right? So it goes through its startup phase, it goes through its growth phase, it goes through maturity, and then it starts declining, right? So it goes up and it comes down, and usually leaders are brought in to affect those cycle changes, right?
Yep.
And I was not brought in to bring to affect a change. I was brought in because somebody needed to step up at that point. While the organization needed somebody to come in and lead, I saw it as an opportunity for me to learn and grow. As as a salesperson, you're always seeing a one-sided view of only your unit, right? You don't get to see how all these parts fit together. You don't see the organization in itself and the moving parts and what works and what doesn't work. So it's this small little space, right, that you have, and you want to expand that. I want to know more. I want to know more about how an organization works, right? What moves it? What are the variables, right? What um, causes the decline, what causes the growth, right? And see how much you can affect in terms of change that you bring in, although it was not required at that point, right? It was just to step in and lead. There was no other expectation per se, right? So
Interesting, because
does that answer your
it,
question?
it yeah, because when you mentioned that, as a salesperson, I see the opportunity, I just saw it and I took it. That is only surface level. But what you really explained, your real driver, your real motivation, was a curiosity to learn, to understand the different parts of the business better. So because you're looking at how do I drive the performance even higher. That
Mm,
was a curiosity. That's what I gathered from what you just mentioned. You know, that was the real driving force within your curious nature to learn, and
yeah.
your sales probably, your sales drive to want to effect that change. So it's a matter of both. It's a mixture of both in that sense. Yeah, nice. Muller, yes, your
Yeah, of course, you could see my face. I already had my first question, but I was muted. So Shamini says hello because she cannot tahan. She's not in the show. Shamini, you can see Ashok and I are having fun, and we've got Mel on the show. Yes, Mel, I forgot to thank you for saying yes because it's not easy to get you to say yes, right? Now, what I really I mean I thought I liked I like the way you said we're salespeople and we take every opportunity, which is fantastic. But I think it's about you. I want to blindly believe that, because if you're not that sort of person, you may not have been in sales and you may not have been so successful in sales. But I think what's really interesting for me is that you use the word step up because you came into the organization not for the position, right? But you happen to be there. And I think what is really interesting about you taking on this position, as our title is, which is people powered succession, right? You are voted in, almost sounds like a political process, but never mind, right? Like how many people, how many leaders get voted in? So when you're voted in, you're already a people's leader. People want you in there because in the short time, they must have seen some qualities in you, right? And these qualities and these competencies are probably accumulated. So you were the right person. But you did use the word that you needed to step up.
Yep.
So maybe you can tell us a little bit about, what. So when you were voted in to be the leader, the new leader, or to head the organization, what were the actions you took to step up? So tell us from maybe your self-doubt, if you had any, what were you worried about, to the point of what are the actions that you took with the concerns and worries and anxieties that you had, if any. So tell us how you thought about it and how you prepared for it.
Okay. So I'm not going to use salespeople. I'm just going to use the actual verbiage for it, I suppose. So in terms of your career, kind of shapes the kind of person you are. Over 15, 16 years, you kind of, get that kind of personality, right? My personality is black and white, right? It's just binary. I love maths. It's yes, no, there's no gray, right? So when I took on the role, you're in it. So it's a yes, you get there. And I didn't really think it through until I got there, and then I'm like, wow, okay, what is this? And then I did not doubt myself at that point. It's just that you realize, and I think a bit slow on the process here, you realize that as a CEO, and you hear these horror stories, right? When a company does badly, you always blame the leadership team. The CEO always stands up front and center. And it doesn't matter whether the organization is small or big, it's always the CEO's responsibility to keep things intact and it doesn't break, right? And so stepping up also meant dealing with that. It's not this newfound burden, but this newfound realization that a lot of things that the organization does in terms of its processes, in terms of employee engagement, in terms of client satisfaction, everything, right, is something you need to look into to ensure that it's good, it's working, and it's moving forward, right? So it's not just sales anymore. It's not just go and bring in the revenue. It's looking into all these different aspects and making sure it's running well, right? So I think that was overwhelming at that point, right? Because you start, then I got my wish came true. I started looking at all these different departments and I'm like, oh my God. Right? You've got business operations and you've got the core team that delivers products, and then you've got finance and you've got marketing, and some of these words I don't like, some of aspects of the organization I just cannot do. Okay, social media being one of them, and and so those things that I did not know how to do were daunting, and it was scary, right? So the first thing I did, I think, was to start speaking to everybody in the company, in the different units that I didn't care to find out more of what they did before. When I was in my little unit, was to go out and find out what they did and their pain points, and what are the challenges. And then you realize that conversation brought out a lot of challenges and a lot of things that people, when you ask them how is it going, no one's going to say, oh great, everything is fine, we've got the best things going on. But they don't, they say right the opposite of that, right? And so you're listening to all this, and then you're getting a little bit more, why did I say yes, right? And then there's a lot of restructuring in your brain that you need to do, right? You need to really sit back and look at it and say, okay, what is it we need to iron out? It's not so complicated, right? It's just processes, it's the people, it's the use of technology. It's about embracing all of it and fixing it one step at a time, one priority, right? Or low-hanging fruits, if you may, right? And I feel the lowest hanging fruit is always processes, because people get a bit dicey after a while. So you fix processes. That's me being black and white. Huh? Yeah. Processes first, and then people later.
Yeah. Nice. Ashok, I after this I pass to you. Really, okay? I cannot tahan. I'm also black and white. I have a lot of gray in between, so I'm going to ask the gray question. So I think what is really interesting is that you come from the sales background, and that's your strength. And when you take on this leadership position, you realize that it requires more than your strength to lead.
Yes.
Right. You say that, and you also say there are things that you don't like to do. And And this is what I really like about you, right? And this is what I really like about the leaders that we bring onto our show, because we usually, as leaders, don't talk about the things that we don't like to do. But we all know that whether you're leading an organization or in whatever position that we are, there are always things that we don't like to do that we need to do, right? What how do you manage, right? Or how do you, because you do say you're a black and white person, right? And to do things, one, that you don't like, number two, it's not your strength, number three, you don't know what you got yourself into, because you probably came with a particular mindset, not knowing the weight of responsibility that you took on. So all of that is showing up, right? And as a black and white person, right, as a person who is very comfortable with process, we know people are the most complex, which is why they are the greatest asset, especially in an organization like People Potential, right? As the name says, right? How did you work through your emotion, and how did you tame them? And when I use the word tame, I'm assuming you had very strong emotions about, things that you don't like, maybe things. So, and why is this question important? Because I think we all need to do some things that we don't like, that we
Yep.
don't enjoy. Maybe we don't even believe, because you're taking on not just people powered succession, you're also taking on a very well established culture. So tell us more about it.
Okay. So when you do what is it called? Um, when you're trying to motivate your direct reports, or the people within an organization, you always choose to work with their strengths, or at least you try to do your best to work with their strengths and not pick out their faults and drill it into their heads. But as in a leadership role, it's difficult to say that you don't want to do the things that you don't like to do, because you have to do it, right? So, and the reason why I say I don't like doing it is because I believe I am not good at it. I don't want to step into a territory where I think I'm going to fail. Nobody wants to do that, right? And I'm quite opinionated about what I think I will fail at and what I think I'm good at, right? So certain things that I feel I cannot do well, I do not want to attempt it. And that is my strong belief, personality, okay, showing up. Now, when you have to go into a role or do something that you don't like doing, or more like you don't know how to do, that causes a lot of anxiety. Because anxiety and irritation, I suppose, that you have to do it, you don't know how to do it, and even if you do it, it's going to be half-assed, it's going to be not the best, right? And you need to live with yourself with that, because that's the best you can do, right? And in that leadership role, you want to be an example to the people in that unit which you actually don't like in terms of subject matter, right? So how do you manage all this? I don't know. I'm still trying to figure that one out. But what I do, or I try to cope or manage with, is to bring in people who know better than me, right? To take on that role. So they advise. So they may be in the management level or in the executive level, but they are better than me. They are better in this space that I'm not familiar in, and I learn from them, right? Um, one of my struggles is marketing. I don't do that very well. I don't understand it, and it's just wow, it's rocket science, right? But you would think sales and marketing go together, but they don't. Not in my head. So um, so we brought in a person who knows a lot better, and you take suggestions or you take advice and you implement those ideas, right? Like, for example, I always like the people that show interest in being leaders, right? That if they aspire to be better leaders than we are, right? For example, in my sales team, the person who's taking over my role to manage the sales team, I would expect that person to be a lot better than I am, or a lot better than I did, right? Because then you know that um, it's in good hands. That role is in good, that unit is in good hands. I don't expect to always be the mentor or the brains behind the sales role, right? There are people who are better, and I want those people to get better. So similarly, in the situation where I don't know, I want someone better than me in there to advise, right? Because you don't know everything, and you can't expect to know everything, right? So you leverage on the other good people out
Okay. Mel, thank you very much for being very authentic about that story, right? Because you're being real, like what you say, you're black and white, very real in a sense. Yes, you recognize you had the awareness. I don't like this. I don't enjoy it. Oh, bloody hell, it's irritating, you know. So you faced it as it was, right? But what you went on to do thereafter is okay. I don't like it, but I need to do something about it. And what kicked in my view, is your sales training. Because what I heard is you go around asking questions about people's pain points. So you know what are the right questions to ask as a salesperson to identify what are the real problems. So even when you bring in the experts, right, you're able to ask the right questions. And it takes a lot for you to share this, because it also tells you and tells everyone here that as a leader, it's important to maybe put aside our ego, if I could use that word loosely, right? But we all have feelings in this, and we throw that away. But our strengths come up in the way we ask the right questions with the right people, meaning the guys who are experts. And that's how you marry that together. Because then, yes, you said you are you leverage, but for the leveraging, you need a facilitator, and you are that facilitator,
there.
right? Because you recognize, I don't have the strength. Who has it? How do I bring it together? It's your questions.
Yeah, yeah,
That's your sales thinking that comes in. See? So I like the fact that you recognize that there are certain areas that you're not strong in, and you throw it out there. You get angry with it. You bash it. Then after that, say, okay, now let's. I made a meal out of it. Now let's just live my life. I like that. So at least you have a process of throwing your anger, your emotions out, and then getting on with the job. Fantastic. That's the second learning
yeah.
for me. Now, earlier on, you mentioned uh, you focus on process first, then the people later. You know what? Again, I don't really believe that, because I hear that from a efficiency point of view. Why you say that? But if I'm to take two steps back, right? What is your personal philosophy as a CEO, as a leader? What do you believe in? Your personal philosophy as a CEO.
I don't understand the question.
Okay, because as we develop as a person, and as we take on different roles, right? We always develop our own thinking about how do we now become the better version who we are. What is the role of a leader? For example, I have spoken to certain leaders who have they told me a leader's role is to be able to anticipate future problems. Another leader has said leadership role is all about having conversations, for example. So along the way, over the years, your 15, 16 years, you would have definitely developed a philosophy, a thinking about what a leader should be, and the kind of leader that you want to be. What's that philosophy? Because that is definitely driving you on a day-to-day basis, consciously or subconsciously.
He's making me say something that I have to turn back on about the process and the people.
Because you see, earlier on, remember,
Yeah,
Malad also
horrible.
mentioned the people voted you. And you know what? If you're focusing on process, I don't think they would have voted you. There's something else. That's why I said when you mentioned it's about the process, I know that's from an efficiency statement. But for the people in 6 months to vote you, there must be a human connection. And what was that philosophy that you exhibited,
when I
that you
started People
demonstrated?
Potential,
Yes?
actually, in not only People Potential, I think everywhere I've always been known as this really stern, garang person. It's because I think I'm smiling, but I'm not. I think I am, but not. It's just it's face, right? It's like you need to carry a mirror and then see, are you smiling? Are you not smiling? So anyway, and that's how I come across. Right? So audio and video doesn't match here.
Okay.
The people, what I want, what is the impact as a leader, right? I want to leave on others. That's the question, right?
Okay, so I mean, let's go with that because that will probably answer the question about your philosophy of as a leader anyway. All right, let's go with that.
Yeah.
What's your impact?
Yeah. So as a younger executive, junior executive, and we started my job and everything, everybody in their career goes through different types of leadership, right? You experience different kinds of leadership, and there are certain leaders that stand out in your career, right? And I've had in India, in Malaysia, in all these places, right? And there were multiple leaders in this area of companies I've worked with, but the ones that stood out were the ones that I remember till today because of not just the conversations, but because of how they shaped my thinking as a leader, right? It's like your career, what do you want to be when you grow up? It's not as a child, but as a young executive. Who do you want to be when you grow up? What kind of leader you want to be when you grow up? I wanted to be those people. Out of maybe 10 or 20 of them, there were two, right? And that was because they did not go out of their way to make an impact on my career at all, right? They didn't go out of their way um, to actually they didn't make an impact at all in terms of succession, climbing up the ladder, or so to speak. But it was their care, or the fact that they empathized, right? Or the fact that they took the time to nurture or mentor me in the job or the task or whatever it is I was doing at the time, right? Not being personal, but at my job. And that is what I hope that I could leave. So it's not the destination. I don't want to get somewhere. I don't want the company to get somewhere, right? I don't have where are we going to be in the next 3 to 5 years. I probably do, but I'm not sharing that with you now. It is that journey, right? And how you impact the people in the organization to carry on your beliefs of how to be in an organization. Small things, ethics or integrity, small things, right? That you leave behind eventually, should you exit, right? So that's it's impacting the people within, because they carry it to other organizations when if they should leave. It's not just about that organization, right?
Yep.
You're a leader to them at that space in time.
That's right.
Right? And you impact them in that time. Doesn't matter where they are, right? You could have said something good to them that impacted their lives or impacted their jobs, or they could take away to their next job, right? So it's about leaving that behind at least, or influencing that, right? I don't want to, it doesn't matter to me if you say, oh, we didn't grow as much, or we didn't do this, all those financial terms.
Sure.
It's not that, right? It's about what kind of a person you are as a leader, and how did you impact the people, whoever you led.
Mm.
Because you will fail otherwise. You don't have that. What are you
Right.
laughing about?
No. Thank you, because I love that, because now we go deeper and you really realize it's not about the process, it's about the people. And I like the fact that you mentioned, it is true, it happens in all our lives, right? We meet with different type of leaders. There are certain leaders that we don't want to be, and there are certain type of leaders that we want to emulate. We want to be like them. And I like the fact that you share that, yes, it's not that they opened the doors and pushed you up the career, but they provided you with the sustainable steps in that sense. Because what they did was they had conversations with you, they cared about you, they empathized, right? And they were mentoring you, right? And this gave you the firmer foundation and the belief that you were becoming better
Yeah.
because of all of this. And that becomes that leader vision that you have for yourself. Because that's what you said, is it? You're very focused that you're not, if I may not be saying the right words, but I'm probably putting this in your mouth. The way you emphasize it, you will not compromise ethics and integrity.
Yeah.
Yeah. Everything else, you're willing to work at it and help them.
Yeah.
So that they can be a better version of themselves. So even when they leave this organization, any organization, they become their best versions. So no wonder you got voted in.
But that doesn't mean I'm a nice person. Eh? Being that does not mean you're mollycoddling. Half the time I'm screaming my head off somewhere, right?
Thank
And
you for sharing that. No, thank you very much for sharing, because sometimes people get caught in that arena. Say, do I bring out the best by mollycoddling? But do I bring out the best in shouting? But you said shouting, but I believe it's shouting objectively
yes,
and holding them accountable for their results.
yeah. Don't shout randomly. That is it.
Yeah. So there is a process in your thinking, is it? And I think I don't, what I'm seeing is, yes, you have a certain way of developing people, and I'm glad that you said you're not mollycoddling, because you speak it, you call an apple an apple. That's it.
Yeah,
But then you're trying to figure out, how do I polish that apple to be better than
yeah.
who the apple is.
That's right.
Nice. Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Okay. I will keep quiet.
Thank you, Ashok. No, because I want to pick out on a few things before you ask the next question and we move on to the very big questions, right? Jasmine Roy says, recognizing those trying to be better leaders, giving them the space to express themselves. Thank you, Jasmine, for coming in and, putting in your comments. So thank you. Jasmine, I'm sure. Do you know Jasmine? No. Oh, okay. I thought so. Jasmine, thank you very much. Now, what I thought Mel said very differently. I'm letting the shouting slide by me, right? Because it's a different conversation. I'm going to let it slide for a bit. What I took out of you, which was very different from what I would say most leaders will say, is that most leaders will say, we are focused on the vision of the organization. All right. And you didn't say that, number one. Number two is, we often as leaders, we hear big things. We want to hear big stories. But for me, what I thought was different, unique, and yet impactful is the way you see your role as a leader or your purpose as a leader, more than a role. I think what comes to my mind is it's not a role. You see your leadership role, whichever leadership role you're in, whichever role you're in, as purposeful. What's your purpose? Your purpose is to impact individuals, not just to bring their best versions, right? And what you're saying is that you are basically showing them, right? You're showing up as a leader so that they can show up as their best version, because you are looking at, in the way you show up, living footprints for me in their hearts,
Yeah,
right? And that is a permanent gift, because what we receive as footprints, whatever we consider footprints in our life, has a lasting impact and influence on us, and that shapes and helps us to shape our own ideals by mirroring people around us, taking on, because when we have people whom we look at and we connect with, and they are helping us connect with our own ideals, we find ourselves through the people. And that's what you're saying, right? Now, and I think that's really interesting, because that's normally not what we hear. Because you, while you say you like to be focused on the process,
That's easier, don't you think?
or anytime it is easier, right? It is because it's focused on the people, but deep within you're very clear, right? What does it mean to you to be a leader? Which is why I'm very curious to find out, after becoming the chosen leader within the organization, what drove you to do your master's? And what insights did you get?
See, here's the thing, right? Being a CEO is new. Sales, I know. And there was not, see, experiential learning is great. It's fantastic, right? You different situations, you know how to think on your feet, you know how to do so many other things. But what's lacking is structure sometimes, right? And as a CEO, I was not going to risk not knowing enough because I thought maybe I don't have enough, right? And you know, this age old fight where there's the theoretical stance of, you read from a book and then you apply versus experience and then you apply. So I got the experience. Now let's get the other side. I'm thinking maybe that would give me more insight. And yes, the I took up the executive MBA to basically see what else I could do or what was missing, right? So I took that up, and I you got all your subjects to learn and stuff like that, and that was um, all right, relevant somewhat. But what made a difference was that I did a paper that was relevant to the organization, right? Um, leadership. Can't even remember the name now. Leadership for organizational effectiveness in SMEs, right? And so I did my whole paper on that. The insights were some okay, knew that already, but some I learned from, right? And kept that perspective when I was while working in the current organization, right? So it helps you structure your thoughts, and it helps you get some perspective of the industry of the the SME itself. So I'm glad I did it. Um, but it's true, some of the theories can be disputed, can be, but I'm not going to get into that.
Okay, thank you. You know what? Again, it tells me something about you, Mel. You are a
Really.
curious, keen learner. It comes up from 6 o'clock. We've been talking. It is consistent. You are curious. You're always out there learning. You know, and it started by you asking yourself, what else is missing? What else can I learn? Yes, and you have learned certain structures. And again, what you mentioned is yes, certain things can be debated because on the ground it's different for you, right? So in that sense, what are the insights you got when you were writing this paper, right, about yourself as a leader?
Really. Terrible. I focused on leadership styles for an effective organization, right?
Mm.
So there's so many leadership styles. Like, I think over the years, there's 600 over or something like that. I got a shock of my life when I saw that number, right? And so there's this myriad of leadership styles, and not one fits any organization. You need to have like a combination of traits. But the basic thing that showed up was that so I chosen transformational leader, transactional leader, authentic, charismatic, right? And which type of leader suits it will bring in organizational effectiveness in an SME setting for growth. So it's like a mouthful, right? And when I tested it, I was quite disappointed to know it was a transactional leader for Malaysia. Similar for India and Africa, right? Transactional, because transactional leaders are the ones that, reward when good, and they do the opposite when bad. They're very transactional. It's. I would think. I would think, or I would have. An ideal would have been a transformational leader, right? That you want to say that transformational leaders make a change because they actually coach and mentor and help. Employee engagement with transformational leaders are very high, right? Because they're more empathetic to, while they're empathetic to their people, they are also driven by the business. So they have that halfway point, right, where they balance both, I feel, right? But I found out it was transactional, and ever since then I'm like, you know what? Let's not take that study too seriously, and just do it my way. ah,
So you
so
refuse to give up on your ideals, is what I'm hearing.
Exactly.
yeah, I don't think so.
Yeah. In fact, Ashok, I think I'm so go into the transactional bit, but I think we need to focus on have a different conversation around um, the insights that she got from the research. I think it's very fascinating. I can almost guess why it showed up. But I'm so glad that you did not give in to the temptation and decide to be yourself, which is, not just to be transactional. Now, tell us, right? So you came on board, you tried new stuff, you wanted to change, you want to impact life, your ideal, and you were, chosen by the people, which means that the organization that you're leading already had a strong culture. Sometimes leaders are brought in to make a change. But in this case, I think it is the other way around in the sense that the culture, you're supposed to continue to lead the culture, which means you need to change if you don't fit into the culture. Of course, obviously you fit into the culture, otherwise they wouldn't have chosen you, right? But tell us, how has the culture of the organization shaped your leadership brand
It
and how
didn't.
you demonstrated? Yeah.
It didn't. So here's the thing, right?
Mm.
Leaders, as you go into any organization, you have your own brand, you have your own beliefs, you have your own values. You don't take on an organization to blend in, because then you're just not going to affect the change you need. So I'm going to go back to your first few questions about emotions and taming them, right? And this is where it'll come up, right? So you bring to the table your own brand, and sometimes leaders uh, in this instance bring on a bit too much of their brand line, right? They impose their brand, and then you have all these news that comes out. Oh, change management, things are going sideways, right? So to answer your question, I have my own brand, I have my own values, I have my own culture, I have my own thinking. The organization has its own culture, shaped by their leadership, right? The culture is shaped by the leadership. It's not by the people. It's in, it's kind of, it's your vision, your mission, and all that encompasses the culture of the organization, and eventually it becomes the organization. If I went completely with that, then there is no change that's going to happen, right? So when I bring in my own belief structure, my own brand, so to speak, you need to find the balance where it meets, right? So it has to meet somewhere, right? And that causes emotional, because you're waiting to meet in the middle, and in the middle, while you're getting there, it's a struggle, right? But then how you overcome that is to find the similarities, right? And try and find a way to add in or fit in your leadership brand or culture. So yeah, that would cause that emotional uh, upheaval for a little while, I suppose, because you're trying to find your footing. You're trying to find where you meet in the middle, what you can live with, what you can let go, what you can embrace, and what you can share. I believe that if you decide to take on the organization and its culture, no change is going to happen. I think. Don't know, didn't try it yet.
And so, what change have you brought upon with the balance that you have been juggling with at this point of time in your leadership journey?
What change?
What change? So, what do you think you've, if it's okay for you to talk about it? Because you did say, I think you're giving us what we normally don't hear. People are probably doing, leaders are probably doing it, but they don't talk about it so courageously, right? As to say, oh, look here, I have my own brand, and it is true. You're making us think that if you don't bring in your own brand, and if you don't shift the culture a little bit where it is required, for example, do we really need a leader? Maybe all we need is a facilitator in the name of a leader, right? You can call anyone leader, but it's what you're doing, right? And so what I'm hearing from you is like controversial in some ways. I'm not sure whether I've heard it everywhere, or people will say it so openly, right? So you have your own brand and you're saying, hey, we have a great culture, but we need to meet somewhere. And so what you're doing as a leader is that figuring out whatever that balance means, right? And obviously, in the last more than a year, having been in this leader and you say finding your footing, you would have had found some areas where you shifted the balance from the culture to bring in your own leadership brand. So what are some changes that you think you've brought? What are some shifts that you've made within the organization where this balance, you found the balance?
That's a constant. That's a constant uphill climb, yeah. Because I figured that the organization is not going to understand my intentions or where I'm coming from if they don't experience it, right? You need, you see, the trust levels of a new leader that steps into an organization that's already mature is very low. They chose you, yes, but it doesn't mean they trust you, or they don't know what to expect. I wouldn't say trust, but they don't know what to expect. There's a lot of fear in the people because I'm not steeped in your culture or your belief system or your organization values, right? So I figured that small steps, right, to build that trust. It's not about going to everybody and say, "Don't worry, I'll take care of you. Relax. Okay, I'm not going to change anything." It's not that. It was more of, pick small wins, affect change in places you will win, because these small wins builds trust, right? And now I come back to processes, can I? So, processes. So, put in small things that make a big difference, right? Um, Sometimes you don't even know whether these small changes are going to work or not. But what you need to show in all of this is transparency and saying that, look, I'm trying it out, and this is the reason we are doing it, and I'm hoping for this result. right? And this is how it's going to impact all of us, right? So, and then be transparent about the whole thing, because you yourself sometimes, some of these processes you know so well, you can implement it and you know it's going to work. But some things you don't know. It's always it's new, right? Every organization is different, every individual is different, every person is different, right? So those were the things I, we do. Pick the small things that you can affect change on that has big impact. Or,
You know,
you.
Mel, again, listening to you, I didn't have to attend the MBA, but I'm learning a lot from you, right? Because what you've done is you just, no, seriously, what you did was you broke it down and said, you know what? I need to build the trust. And how do I build the trust? By demonstrating my intentions and letting people experience my intentions, right? That's how I can build trust. And what can I do? I can focus on quick wins, small wins. And while I do that, I am transparent and I communicate about the results, the outcome.
Yep.
So there is a process there, you know,
Yep.
and it's fantastic. And I like the fact that you said that when you went for the MBA, there are a lot of question marks about whether it's really applicable. That's I heard one part. The other thing I heard is you were grimacing about the whole transactional part because you rather be transformational.
Right.
So my question to you is this: what are your plans for the next stage of development as a leader?
So I've heard Muller say that it's been a successful journey, right? I'm not gonna admit that, but I'm just gonna say if that's how you look at it, right? It's been good, right? We did well during the pandemic, and we are growing. And now comes another emotion, right? When you do well, when you get an A, you're very happy. I panic. You know why? I don't know whether I can get an A the next time around, right? Similarly, success is like this big headache, right? You get it, you celebrate, and then, oh my God, can you do it again? And environment is changing, economic situation is changing, a whole lot of things are changing. You need to plan, you need to do it all over again. And that is the biggest worry right now, right? Can you keep doing it? Getting the A is no biggie. You're going to get it someday. Keeping it going, right? Keeping it sustainable. And at the end of the day, my development, or by the time um, my term is up, maybe, I want that formula to be in place. We know how to grow, and we know how to sustain that growth. You must understand a very specific problem, very specific to SMEs and even some organizations. Some is that they get on the growing bus and then they cannot sustain it. You go backwards. And that is not something I think anybody has figured out the formula to. I'm not saying I'll figure it out, but I want to know how to do it well. Right? So that's going to be the next thing is, okay, we are successful, we are good. So how do we keep it going? Right? There's so many theories out there, right? Scaling, and there's, the growth mindset and all the big words. But what is it actually, right? What do you do? How do you get there? How do you stay there? How do you get there is okay. How do you stay there? Is the biggest question. Which you don't know who's going to come and kick you off your platform, right? There's so many companies who are getting better than you. You need to know that there are things out there that are better. And for you to stay on top is a lot of effort. Right? So
Thank
that's
you.
going to be my
Yeah. So what I'm hearing is, I like the fact that you said success is a headache. And can I keep my success sustainable? I mean, you're so real. I love that. I can imagine having coffee with you or teh earlier. And you know what got you beginning an hour ago? What I realized about you is you're a curious learner, right? And at the end of this show, That's what I'm still hearing. You're a very curious learner because now you want to find that formula, right? To be able to grow the company and sustain that kind of growth in the SME world. Something different. You said there's no answer, but I'm going to experiment. You didn't say that, but I can almost see you, right, taking all the different literature, the research out there and saying, you know what, there is a formula for SMEs where we can build, we can sustain that growth because I want to learn how to do it well. And that is the question that you keep asking yourself. And that has been your trajectory for your personal growth, your leadership growth. And I believe that is what is going to build your business growth. The constant question of, I want to learn how to do it well. Wow, I learned. Thank you, Mel. Mala, do you have a closing question for Mel?
No, I'm not going to ask her a closing question, but I want to just ask her, is there any closing insight that you would like to share? Because I've never written down so many quotes from an interview, ma'am. And I know you are successful. Tell us, yes, before you leave. You don't have to agree, but because you don't agree with the normal things anyway, so it's okay. We get that. Um, but before we get you off the screen, I really want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for being so courageous to say things that's real, yeah. And it also tells me this type of culture, people potential is for you to, for you to experiment, to grow, to try all of these things. So it's fantastic. But before we say goodbye to you, is there any other insight that's like still, needs to be tamed, that's creating emotion that needs to be tamed that you like to share with us?
I had one and then I lost it.
Ah, too long, my question. Okay. So we'll need to bring you back.
Yeah, no, I'm good. Thank you for letting me share. It was good.
No,
It was good
no.
questions.
Yes.
Thank you
Thank
for
you.
sharing. I love the fact that you don't follow mainstream. I
Yeah.
disagree. I disagree. I disagree. I love that.
Yeah. So, Mel, thank you very much, again for saying yes to us, joining us, and being so authentically courageous and transformational and keeping to your ideals. So, with that, as we say bye to Mel, and I know, Ashok is going to
Thank
be
you,
like,
Mel.
now so sad because we said bye to Mel. So, Ashok, I think you would agree. I can see how excited you are that it was a right decision that we asked Mel, and thank goodness she said yes, because we've learned quite a bit about leading in a very strong culture with very strong personal leadership brand.
That's
And
right.
how do you bring all of that together? Because when we first started leadership in Flow Asia, right, we are when we talk about being in flow, right, we don't sometimes we think there are no storms. But I think while what I have learned from Mel is that if you are clear about who you are and you're
Exactly.
focused on your personal growth and you let that sip into your leadership growth, business growth will happen. Which is
That's
why
right.
we need to be in a culture that's safe enough for us to grow and for us to express our best version while she's making the best version of all the people that she meets in her leadership journey is what
That's
I
right.
think. So with that, I'm going to say my goodbye. I'm going to let you say any piece before
Oh
we
no, I'm
both
good.
say goodbye.
I'm good. Thank you all for logging in and listening to us. And we've got another show coming up next week. It's also about leaders of change. Log in next week, same time. Right? You've covered everything about Mel, and I'm very happy. I'm just still over the moon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, as we say goodbye, we look forward to meeting you again next week with another leader of change. Between then and now, remember, make the small changes that makes a big difference, according to Maria Mel. Bye.
Bye bye.